Okay, assuming you can see that, this is a segue from the introduction of the Wisconsin Ag Climate Outlook that is just coming out probably later today. So this is, we'll be drawing mostly from highlights from that, as well as a few other of my own little tidbits to add. So here's the list of presenters who contribute to this Ag Climate Outlook each week. And starting off with actually, I think I jumped the gun here. The key points. So we always start off with the 3 key points to get across. This week, not surprisingly, the big one is it's been wet. The rainfall just keeps coming ceaselessly, it seems. Southern Wisconsin got the biggest hit in the past week, as I'll show. Not surprisingly, soil moisture levels are really, really high. Flooding has been an issue in many parts of the state with rivers and fields and so forth. And then for a change, temperatures were a bit cooler than normal last week to start the month, but we're expecting the last half of July to trend back to warmer than normal, and a brief mention of a heat wave that's likely this weekend, especially Sunday, Monday. So the rainfall is the big hot ticket item these days in the weather world. And here you see the past 7 days worth of precipitation. I've highlighted in this box the areas of most interest, the yellow being 2 or more inches, all the way up in some places 5 to 6 inches. And that's mainly in the southern half of the state, especially the southwest. And the 5 to 6 is just in little pockets, but a widespread area of anywhere from 2 to 5 inches around the state, which we don't really need right now on top of all the wetness that we've already had. And even more impressively is if we go back and look at the last 30 days or the beginning of June, we really see just how excessive the rainfall has been throughout Wisconsin, almost without exception. This time I'm highlighting the box of the 6 to 8 to all the way to 10 inches in red. You see almost all of the state is in that area. And then in the magenta is places that have really gotten soaked, 10 to 15 inches over the past 30 days, so around a foot. You see that's especially true in the south and the southwest. Interestingly, the area that was in the most extreme drought over the past year. So things have completely flipped 180 degrees, and now it's too much of a good thing. And the numbers just came out this week, and they say that Wisconsin just had its 6th wettest June on record. And even more impressively, it's the very wettest May-June combined period in our state's history, going back to 1895 record keeping. So that has a big effect on the soil moisture and river levels and so on that I'll get to next. Obviously, where you are, you may be seeing fields underwater, at least partially underwater. Lake levels are high, stream levels are high, but the Mississippi River is also high. In fact, there was a June record in La Crosse briefly, and here you see color-coded some of the current high river levels with flooding, minor flooding in orange, moderate in red, and major flooding in the very southwest tip in this purple color. Fortunately, these levels are expected to recede as some of the rainfall tapers off in the next week or so. But right now, those levels continue to be high. And certainly if you're living along the Mississippi, you're very familiar with this. Not surprisingly, soil moisture is running extremely high right now. This is showing the percentiles compared to normal. So the blue area is saying that it's in the top 2% of what's expected historically based on past years. This is the upper meter of soil moisture, and you see a pretty broad area in the western and central part of Wisconsin in that category. And the green is nearly as high, the dark green, in the 95th percentile, so the top 5% of years in terms of soil moisture. So this is very widespread. It's not just like one part of the state's being affected and not others. This really is a true statewide event that we're going through, this wet pattern. And as I mentioned, the past week has started off cool for July, our hottest month of the year. These are the temperature anomalies for the past week, the green being areas of just a little bit below normal, up to 2 degrees, and then the blue and the purple being bigger, anywhere from 2 to 4 degrees cooler than normal. So it's been substantially cooler for what we expect to be the hottest time of the year. in keeping with that theme, I'm going to show a little bit longer time scale now with growing degree days back to April 1st. On the left is the total growing degree days that have accumulated in Wisconsin. The light blue being anywhere from 1,000 or more units. So that would be the pretty much the southern 2/3 or 3/4 of the state. The only exception, sub 1,000, being the far north. I find it a little interesting when you look at the departures from average, though, over the same time period, that we haven't been as high as you might expect. So the blue and the purple are close to average. So you see the northwest quarter of Wisconsin's actually been slightly below average for growing degree day accumulation, affecting crop development. The southern half has been on the higher end compared to usual. But we have been warmer than normal since the beginning of April. So it's kind of interesting that hasn't been completely reflected in the growing degree days. But one reason that may be true is that we've largely escaped the hot weather so far. This map is showing the highest temperature recorded this year, and only the areas in red have reached 90 degrees. Kind of surprisingly, it's just the southern, mostly the southern part of Wisconsin, a few areas speckled around, but most of the state has yet to see any hot, really hot weather. La Crosse, Eau Claire, Wausau, none of those have hit 90 degrees yet this year, but that may be changing soon as this weekend. Now, specifically in terms of crop development, this is the latest NASS statistics that just came out this week. First of all, showing corn progress. Silking has been reported now in some fields in Wisconsin, just getting going, about 3% coverage, close to normal, much higher amounts farther south, as you'd expect, the normal crop development seasonally. And similarly for soybeans, we're starting to see blooming in the state, nearly 25% complete across Wisconsin and just slightly below the long-term average. So as we're getting later into summer, we're starting to see this kind of phenological changes in our crops. Now, the overall assessment of crops in the state is really quite good. The rainfall has been too much of a good thing, but overall, we're a lot better off than we were last year when we seemingly had no rain. For perspective, corn and soybeans were rated for only 40 to 45% good to excellent 1 year ago when we were suffering from such drought. Whereas this year, currently, we're at around 60 to 62% considered good to excellent, corn 62%, and soybeans 60%, which is somewhat of an improvement over last week. Still a ways to go compared to our neighbors, but definitely much better than last year. Not as good as 2022. 2 years ago, we kind of hit the just right amount of rainfall and heat. Now, looking ahead, the precipitation forecast looks like it's going to give us a break. Finally, it's looking like a not such a wet week ahead. The areas in green, which is almost all of Wisconsin, are reflective of no more than ½ an inch of rainfall forecasted. And we typically average about an inch per week in the summer in Wisconsin. So this would be considerably less than normal. In combination with the heat, that should help to dry out some of the soils. Good thing. Looking ahead, it's appearing that after the upcoming heat wave, Sunday, Monday coming up, that the rest of July will probably be on the warm side. This is looking at the 8 to 14-day outlook that just came out this week, and you see we're not alone. Most of the country is expected to have excessive summer heat, especially out west. In terms of precipitation, no clear signal, no sort of equal chances of wet or dry or near normal for precipitation over the next week to 2 weeks in our state. And then finally, some of the take-home points from our report this week. Obviously, it's been wet the past week. On top of all the wetness we've had, southern Wisconsin's been hit especially. And then temperatures cooler than normal for the state over the past week, but that's about to change. In terms of impacts, we definitely see area rivers in flood stage, as well as the big Mississippi River. No drought whatsoever in the state anymore. And we're starting to see corn and soybeans either sulking or in bloom now, and that'll progress as the weeks go ahead now. And then the main outlook, we're lucky. We're seeing a drier week likely ahead, finally, in Wisconsin, pretty much everywhere. Warmer than normal, though, as we go into the latter half of July. And then this heat wave that I mentioned, it looks like it'll begin Saturday, hopefully end Tuesday, with Sunday and Monday being the hottest, with some low 90s and high humidity likely across much of the state. But it does look like we'll revert back to near normal, possibly even slightly below normal, the middle of next week for the next few days after that. So just a little bit of heat that might help with crop development and also help dry out the soils, which we desperately need. So I will stop with that and just provide our contact information for our authors and be happy to take any questions directly from you now, or you can put them in chat and I'll get to them as I can.
Great. Thank you very much, Steve. We really appreciate you and your group being with us for these Badger Crop Connects.